So recently I built this X-Men MOC, which is a vignette featuring a custom LEGO minifigure of Psylocke. Let me walk you through some of the techniques I used in this build, and also discuss some of the interesting building tips and tricks that I learnt while I was making this. Let's dive in. So for those interested, I bought this custom Psylocke figure from Engineero. There'll be a link in the description to their store, so if you want to buy one yourself, that's where you can check that out. The original figure had some custom printing on the head, and a different kind of hair color that wasn't quite as accurate to the source material. Depends which comic you're reading, but I was hoping for purple hair. So I swapped it out for some purple hair that actually came on a knockoff figure, and I changed the face for an official LEGO face, and I think the end result looked way better. Oh, and by the way, I changed the sword out for a trans pink katana that came on some of the recent crystallized Ninjago sets as well. So that's where that figure comes from. I love the end result so much for this figure, I thought, I really want to give it some kind of home, build a little vignette for it to live on. So I started to look at imagery related to samurais and warriors fighting, and I also looked up different kind of shrines or torii gates and other things. Now, my original idea involved Psylocke fighting a member of the Hand, or maybe multiple members of the Hand. I enjoyed the idea of some kind of showdown between her and a Hand warrior, but the idea changed as I began to start building. So let me show you what I left off with on the original version of this vignette. All those rainbow colors and the weird grass at the top there that's very unfinished and doesn't look that great. This is just how I left it off when I decided to switch directions with how this was being built, so excuse some of those unfinished areas, but you can still get the idea of where I was going at just by looking at it. So what was going to happen here was Psylocke was going to be on one side and a red Hand warrior was going to be on the other side, as you can see from these expertly drawn images of stick figures, and I wanted them to be posed in some manner that would suggest that they're about to begin a fight. I thought this would look pretty similar to some of the imagery that I found while I was doing my research. Now, I liked this idea, and I was very keen to pursue it, but I just wasn't happy with how the landscape was looking. The landscape was well built, I did like how it looked, but it used so many similar techniques to a previous creation that I'd only recently made earlier this year. It had curved rocks near some water, with some dark tan plates on the top, almost identical to this MOC that I made. So I don't know, my motivation wasn't as high to build this because it just felt too similar to something else that I'd already done. So I felt a desire to do something new, to challenge myself by using new and more exciting building techniques. So I paused this design, put it on hold. I still have this vignette built, by the way, so I can always revisit it later. But I thought, okay, let's try something new. So the first thing I looked at was the rock design. I thought that was the thing that was boring me the most. So I did a bit of research on other ways that people had approached rock designs, and I came across this really cool build. This was built by Fallen Empire, and it's called The Sound of the Sea. This is such an awesome MOC, and if you want to look at some more stuff by Fallen Empire, I've got a link to his stuff in the description below. Please check out their stuff. They're honestly one of the best MOC builders out there at the moment. Love their work. So seeing this rock design, I realized that it uses some of these dark tan pieces that are CCBS shoulder elements from the Star Wars Ultra Build Finn set. Now sadly, these exact pieces don't appear in light bluish grey, and I knew I wanted my rocks to be that specific color. So I thought, well, okay, he's also used some helmets and other pieces that are very similar in texture. Why don't I just look at all of my grey hair pieces and helmets and do something similar but slightly different and see if I can pull off this rock style on a slightly smaller scale. I gathered up all of my smooth light bluish grey hair pieces and attached them onto a base using some just plain old simple studs. It's a pretty simple connection, and immediately I was way more on board with building this creation. This new technique excited and motivated me way more. I quickly realized I was going to abandon the idea of Psylocke fighting someone because just the way it was progressing as I started to build it, there wasn't really room for that anymore. It was a shame, the idea was cool, but like I said, I can always revisit it later, and sometimes the pieces just guide you in a specific direction, and I realized Psylocke would look cool just walking under the arch. That's all that it needed. So from here I transitioned into adding in other plant elements so that the landscape looks similar to the images that I'd found in my research. A few pieces of note that I added include these green Wolverine claws. Now these appear on an old Christmas set, which is 10293 Santa's Visit. You get a decent amount of them too, thankfully, in this set, so if you buy it, you're decently set to build some landscape. And when they were actually hidden behind these rocks, they looked a lot less like Wolverine claws and more like actual blades of grass. And that was actually a big part of designing this vignette. I wanted it to just be photographed and viewed from the front only. So if you looked at it from the back, things would look a lot less organic and natural and look just kind of ugly and unappealing and nothing like landscape. Now, I'm only showing you this from this angle because this video is breaking down the techniques that I used and the ideas behind the build. You aren't really meant to be looking at this, but I'll let this one slide. But I do think that's a great philosophy to have when you're building. If you're only viewing something from one angle, it allows you to use techniques that you really couldn't when you're looking at it from a 360-degree viewpoint. Limiting viewing angles really does change the game. A few other pieces that I used here, I have a lot of bamboo parts in this. I mean, these are just Lego candle pieces in bright green, but they appear in a bunch of sets as bamboo with this color, so it works. A few of these sets that they actually come in actually have pretty large quantities of these pieces. So for example, this flower set has 22 of them, and this old Spring Lantern Festival set has 16 in that one set. So if you've just bought one or two of these sets, and many of the other sets that they appear in, which still have decent quantities, you're pretty set to do something like this. Now, while this creation is a bit on the smaller side, I think it was really fun to learn about interesting building techniques, and it was a blast to deliberately challenge myself to use new techniques, which I think produced really fun, awesome results that were just a blast to build. And I encourage you to do the same. Challenge yourself and see what kind of fun you can have while you do so. So I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about the process and the techniques behind this build, and I hope you also enjoy the end result of this little vignette here. I really like building smaller scale builds that show off really cool looking minifigures like this. It's just one of the things that I've always enjoyed making, and hopefully it gives you a bit of inspiration for your own future builds too. Thank you very much for watching, happy building, and bye for now.